So, welcome, darlings, to the Wild Creatrix Cafe. I'm your host, Adela Rubio, author, coach, Wild Creatrix, and lover of deep and delightful conversations. So, I'm excited to bring you this series with amazing people that I know, that are colleagues, and we've known each other for years. I think, Gina-Dianne, you and I know each other at least a decade.
At least, yes.
I think it was 2009 or thereabouts that, we came into each other's circles, and we've been in each other's circles ever since, so it's wonderful. And in the Wild Creatrix Cafe, we're exploring how creators get their gifts and projects out into the world and how you can too. And we're exploring this in different avenues. We're looking at how to explore and how to unleash the wild creative genius that is you. Discover ways to share it. We each do it in different ways. Gina-Dianne writes books. She writes a lot. She does lots of other things too. But some of us have different ways of bringing our creative expressions out. So it doesn't matter what the creative expression, even doing things and activities, planning a family vacation can be such a delicious creative project. Life is creative. You are creative in every moment. And in this series, what we're doing is we're just exploring the different ways that you can get to share that creative genius. And then the thing that for me is the clincher and that really boosts the impact of your creativity and your juiciness in the world is the circle that you're connected to. So if you want to connect to a conscious, creative, caring, delicious, delightful circle, I'm going to share the people that I know and I'll invite you to my community. We are really just such an amazing group of people that, when we come together, as we do even in these situations, magic happens just because of who we are and what we bring to the party. So I'm excited to have you participate in the series and to introduce one of my mega buddies, someone who I adore, Gina-Dianne Harding, who happens to be a Kindle best-selling author, a speaker, a mentor, a coach, a visionary. She's so many things. She's a higher consciousness activator who facilitates transformation from ordinary living to high-frequency adventures. And for over a decade, she's been helping clients and students easily reconnect to their abundant nature and infinite possibilities. Welcome, Gina-Dianne.
Thank you. It's so great to be here. I'm feeling the energy, and it's wonderful to have Santina with us and to have other people that are going to be listening to this on the replay. I'm just really feeling the energy.
Yeah, I'm really excited. And I'm really excited because this seems to be one of those topics, the topic of your latest books. So you've written 3 books, 2 were your own, and 1 was a collaboration. I had forgotten about that earlier. I was like, well, that's right, she did a collaboration too. What is it about the story of Mary Magdalene that led you to write this book?
Well, I've had a connection with Mary Magdalene now for many years. There was just always something about her. I guess when I was young, I was brought up in a fairly religious household, and so it was just natural. And the story of Mary always struck me as one that was very powerful. And I think even then I knew that there was something about the way she was portrayed that wasn't quite right. And I felt I had a connection with her. So with the, probably 15, 20 years ago, I started to have a stronger connection with her, reading books about that talked about different ways that she may have lived. And then I had a dream one night. I think it was after I'd written my first book, and she was starring in my dream. And the next morning, I knew that this would be the opening for a book I would eventually write about her. And I thought, at the time I was, well, before that actually, I had been working on my Master of Divinity, and I thought I might do a project that dealt with Mary, and really felt strongly that I needed to that I needed to work with her. And then something bright and shiny kind of distracted me, and I got this idea for working with crystals and the emissary transformation wheel, and decided to go with that. So, but she kept kind of talking to me, and finally, after I wrote my second metaphysical fantasy, I decided that the time was right, and she was just talking to me so loudly that I needed to pay attention. And so that was the start of this book.
Yeah, I love how you're illustrating how an idea takes hold of you. And, you know, sometimes we think, okay, I've got this idea, I've got to do something now. And sometimes yes, and sometimes no. And then, so it can simmer for a while and not necessarily let you go, right? It can come up and then go down again. So how did you know that now? What do you think about now? Why now? Like, why do you think now, this book on Mary Magdalene?
Because the timing for a shift in the way that we think about Mary, the way that we think about divine male and female, is occurring. We're into the infancy of the golden age of consciousness, and the energy is such that people can get the message, I think, from the book. And there's lots of different layers and messages. And ultimately, the themes that come through in this book are ones that are appropriate for people. I think people are maybe ready to hear the story, or as she's been telling it to me anyway. And so, yeah, the timing is just perfect for us, for the way that everybody's ready.
So you mentioned themes. What are some of the themes that you're noticing coming up as a consequence of writing the book?
One of the themes is that life is easy and effortless, that you create your own reality, that you focus, that your thoughts create your reality, and so you need to be consciously aware. The whole idea stems from the fact that we can live in higher consciousness, and that there are different ways of looking at consciousness, and even going beyond that. I tend to like to go, what's beyond, what's more, in my books. And so I think that that's another one of the big themes, is what's beyond and what's more. So those are a few.
You know, when you said create your own reality, that's something that those of us that have been in the circles of transformation, we've heard that, we've read the books, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so I'd love to know, what are you noticing is different? Because even me, I'm noticing some changes, some shifts around what that means to us. What does that actually mean to someone who is playing in the beyond, the way that you are, and the way that you call people to the beyond? What is the beyond way of taking this phrase, creating your own reality, and making it more?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say that going into the beyond, you are in reality seeing the world as it is, in a way that is so exciting, so delicious, so full of possibilities, that you explore. You're curious, and you're always exploring what is more, what else is there, what's beyond communication. So really, really deeply feeling in your cells what the person that you're interacting with is trying to say. And it's really very powerful to just open your mind and ask that question: what's more, what's beyond? What if there's more beyond immortality, or if there's more to beyond the megaverses? I live in the omniverse, and there's even more beyond the omniverse that I've explored too. So when you think of, there's just no limits, no boundaries to anything when you're creating your reality in the beyond.
Yeah, I love what I'm hearing. I love what I'm hearing. And I'll tell you, I've got some really pretty fun imagery while you were speaking. And like one of the things that I got for me, like when you talk, some people may not really be sure what you're talking about when you're talking about the beyond. And so at one level, so I'm hearing that there are so many dimensions, so many frequencies at which you can play, and often in more than one, which in our world sometimes looks like a paradox, right? Mm-hmm. So you can be, you're creating your own reality, and you're not necessarily, getting, like the 7-figure speed car and the mansion, right? And you could still be creating your reality, but it's the reality that you want to create.
Mm-hmm. So it's one that's joyful, and it's one that's exuberant, and one where the universe presents you with a lot of options.
So in talking about this beyond, so for me, I got two things. One is that the beyond is, beyond the filters, beyond the conditioning, beyond the labels, beyond the norms, beyond everything that you ever learned. Mm-hmm. And that the beyond is actually, it felt like really I was catapulted out, on the Starship Enterprise. And we were exploring new worlds and new realms and things that have never been before. That, there's kind of like this common attitude that there's nothing new, that things are just a recycling of what has been.
Yeah.
So what are you noticing about the ability to create brand spanking new things?
Well, one of the things that has come up in the book is that we're experiencing new archetypes. And that is, instead of, some of the ones that I'm seeing are supersensual beings, where we're constantly living in a changing world and upgrading, and that we're superseding versions of ourselves, that so that we're infinite beings, as Solara talked about. We're even gone beyond that to being gods, as it were, being ascended masters, being whatever it is that we want to be and create and can dream of. So with the archetypes, Mary's revealed to me an archetype that is a combination of the divine male and the divine female. And we're calling it divine androgyny for now. And she actually talks about how she and Jeshua, in part 2 of the book, how she and Jeshua are one soul, one divine being, and yet they've chosen to incarnate in the reality that they're living in as a male and a female, so that they can show that they each have a whole and balanced aspect, that their beings are whole and active. So, whole and balanced. So, the idea of divine male and divine female, she says, is still separation, and it's a duality. And so what she is talking about is how every man and every woman has characteristics of both, and that rather than thinking of ourselves as a divine male or divine female, the time has come now where we need to start putting those two together. We've experienced a surge in feminine divinity, feminine awareness. Women and men are realizing now the value, and she wants to see it just become everybody's attributes and characteristics and skills, and that we have a full skill set that we can draw from. So it's really exciting to see that version of archetype, a new archetype that hasn't been before. And another one is that came through thanks to you is the Wild Creatrix Unleashed, and that's really a yummy one. It's you know, getting into the soup of creation and diving in and experiencing limitless possibilities, and getting in there and getting your hands all involved in the creation process when you're in your body, and when you're not in your body, just being able to create as a wave form or as a particle, and a lot of quantum theory comes into it. So yeah, anyway, I'm kind of...
There's so much popping for me around everything that you just said, and even, you know, when we had our break. One of the things that I'm noticing and getting from our conversation here is this idea of, you know, the masculine and the feminine for so long having been transactional for the majority, right? Mm-hmm. You get this, and then I get this in exchange,
mm-hmm. Yes.
Right? Which is separation, you know. Mm-hmm. And to notice how in relationships things are shifting, you know, in modern day relationships, especially the ones where it's working. And for a huge segment of the world, that old thing, the transactional thing, and we may think that it's the person or it's this or it's that, but it's at the core, the energy is no longer something that is sustainable, that is workable. Mm-hmm. And where we see it working is in relationships where there is this unhooking of a lot of the traditional roles and the traditional ways of being. And there is a newness, a oneness, a synergy that is starting to occur. So I can see how this new archetype is really bringing us to a different place where even, you know, this divine androgynous being could be who we become, you know, is in the becoming. Mm-hmm. Or or right now, even at the core, it's about the energy, and the energy being an energy of no separation, of allness, of wholeness.
Yes.
The other thing too, that around these archetypes that I'm seeing is, you know, this idea of measuring the goodness in life by things versus measuring the goodness in life by the energy of the creation that's moving through you.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
It's like, if there's going to be any end goal here, it's that. And there are some of us that are really coming awake to that. So it may, when we create our reality, it may be looking different than what other people were thinking when they were creating their reality. But that is because there is this energy substrata shift in terms of the makeup of our energetic selves. Mm-hmm. And what is occurring. So I'm very excited about this. I see it happening everywhere. So I'm so happy that you're speaking about it. And of course,
yes. One of the other themes that kind of relates to what you're saying, Adela, is the fact that when we see Mary as the powerful being that she is, we notice that that she is. I just lost my train of thought. Okay, she's creating history in this book. She's creating a new way of being seen, and by creating this this new way of being seen, she's actually affecting the timeline, and that we're going from the time that she was alive in the Holy Land, and the changes that she's making in the book, so that when people read it, they come to see her as the person, the higher conscious being that she really was, and how powerful, and how she was actually doing a lot more, I believe, than what the Bible and the historians of that time say. There's not a lot of history about her. But by reading this, we're changing the timelines, and she's changing the timelines. And women are, I think that's what's causing the shift in energy that you were talking about. By people being aware of these concepts, we can make a tremendous leap in where we are from looking at separation, looking at oneness, and from mass consciousness. So we can make that shift, and she's changing, as I said, the timelines by doing this. I don't know if
and you are also with writing the story as it's coming through you, and the people read it. It's this, we do it every day, all day, every day, right? And there are a lot of us doing it all day, every day, and I'm certain they're going to come across, my series probably.
Yes.
But I would not be surprised if we find some information documenting a different Mary moving forward, because that is how it works. I mean, energy moves through timelines and creates shifts, and then comes back and ripples and creates more changes. So
exactly.
And we're living in I think one of the things that I'm getting from our conversation even more solidly is how fluid everything is today, and how you can instantly, from moment to moment, be a different being. Depending on what the situation calls for. You just find it's almost like, a coming apart and a coming together of a more ideal being for the moment. To me, it astounds me sometimes when I see people that normally behaved a certain way, and I'm seeing some fluidity in people that aren't even doing any of this.
It's so thrilling.
Wow! How amazing is that?
Yes, that's right.
So it's, some people may think, some people may be like, golden age of consciousness. I never heard of that. Well, stick around, folks, because, you will be hearing more about these kinds of things. I could keep going with questions, but I know that we're coming on time. Santina, I don't know if you had any questions, love, or if you wanted to share anything, any insight anything that's popped for you in our conversation, feel free.
Gina-Dianne, you said that, Mary's been coming to you with this story, and, you call it sort of like a fantasy. And so would you say that, as you're going to market it as a fantasy, but if she's speaking to you and through you, would you say that it's more, she's trying to explain reality, but you're not really going to say to people that, well, this is the way it was. So, they might be able to accept it more as a fantasy. Exactly.
That's the whole reason that I've chosen to go that route. I think that's why I steered away from doing it as a thesis project, because it is so utterly unreal to people. And yet it's so real to me. And exactly, I couldn't see myself as saying, well, this is the way that it really was, and having people accept it. But as a fantasy, hopefully they're kind of open to what's coming through and what ultimately ends up in the book, because there's lots of different information that I'm getting and writing about that we'll see when it all comes together at the end, how much is included. That's a great question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Santina. And I would say, Dianne, I've heard a number of writers talk about their characters as if they're channeling them. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah.
So, there are so many things that we take for truth, all in uppercase, in quotes, that we later on discovered just isn't so. And I think the speed at which we're discovering that now is giving us a solid feel of how fluid things are, and how things don't necessarily have to be the way they are, and what could they be? which is your invitation over and over. I get that.
That's right. What could they be? And I think I'm hoping that the flavor of the book is going to demonstrate Mary's deep love for humanity and her willingness to make some hard choices in order to convey the information that she wants to. So, yeah.
I know you're going to lead us through an experience with Mary, but before you do that, actually, you know what? Let's do that now, and I'll save my last question for after that.
Okay, sounds great. So, what I'd like everybody to do is just to be relaxed, close your eyes, take a couple of deep breaths in, and feel all the tension draining from your body. Feel all the crud that's collected, leaving, being busted up, and feeling very spacious within. Think of something that makes you feel extremely joyful, where you feel bliss. It might be an object, or it might be a painting, some music, a place that you've been. And feel that bliss expanding in you until it gets to be so big that you almost feel like you're going to pop. Your heart, your cells, everything's dancing. It's just a wonderful feeling of ecstasy. And from that place, let's call Mary Magdalene. Come, come, come. And feel her energy as it comes to you. And see her appearing in front of you. You're in a big, spacious area. Maybe in the beyond, in the cosmos, where you see a wonderful doorway that says, "Enter here." And you and Mary take a step through to see what the moreness is, to see all of the things that you have created that are magnificent, that sometimes you may not have even realized that you've created. And in this spaciousness, you and Mary find a comfortable place where you can commune. And you get to ask her a question. You might want to ask her what her life was really like, what her perspectives were. Whatever is coming up for you that you'd like to know about Mary as she reveals it to you now. Are you aware of why you resonate with her? Maybe you can talk about that a bit too. And Mary wants you to know that you are so important to the world. that as a wild creatrix, you and she are kindred souls. And if you don't know yourself as a wild creatrix, get in touch with that part of you deep in your core. She invites you to let that part of you come forward and join in the chat. What's the next thing that you can do when you're connected to her energy signature? That deep connection of love, of light, knowing that you are perfect just as you are, that you can unleash into a yummy creation, that you can receive and give, loving yourself, loving your neighbor, and loving the Creator. She asks you to become one, to honor all the characteristics and abilities that you have, to see them as never having been in the realm of one or another type of person, to see them as whole. And now Mary has a message that she wants to give you. But first, she wants to give you a divine gift. She hands you a shiny, iridescent, shimmering bag. You take it and it's so light, you can't quite conceive of what it could be. How can there be something in there that's so light? Before you open it, she says, I want you to divine my message from the energy that's in this bag. Just connect with it. See, what is the message that I have for you? It may not even be related to the gift. And she pings you and says, listen. And you feel a numinous awe. The energy is so present and so deeply moving. You're touched by her message. And now she says, go ahead and open the bag. Are you going to carefully unwrap it, or are you going to tear into it to see because you can no longer wait? Examine it closely. It's something that perhaps will help you along, leaping into your next steps. Or maybe it's something completely different. You may know the gift immediately, or it may come as a symbol of something that will unlock over time. It's a special power as well. It contains a special power, a superpower that you've always yearned for, and at the same time, you've never known that it's something that would be meaningful for you. A paradox. Mary helps you imbue that special power into your cells. You embrace. And you walk back through the doorway. Find yourself coming back into the present. Mary is with you in your cell memory, and you can always connect with her by going into your deep wild core or coming out into the cosmos. She's a part of you. You can connect at any time. And wiggle your fingers and your toes. And when you're ready, open your eyes.
I got some good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Do we have time to share, or?
Oh, absolutely. We've got time. Yeah, we're a little over, but we had a little snafu too, so I'm going to have to stuff. Oh, you know, I had a question first for her.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that's been, oh my God, it's a relationship that's going on for a really long time. And I still sometimes wonder, I'm like, why am I still kind of in this? And I got, you're not the norm, you're the new.
Mm.
So, you know, there was still in my head, I'm like, well, this is a different kind of relationship. There's just a lot of space in this relationship. And I have no inclination, you know, to change its form at this point.
Yes.
Right? And it's like, yeah. Who says that that's not open? You know, and it's so funny. Like you find these little pockets of these little places where you're still like, there's still a hook in somewhere with something and a little thought will pop up. And it hasn't been a big nagging thing, but it's still like, you know, like a little annoying thing that you think sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So that was good to hear. And then in terms of my gift, I was kind of like surprised because it was timelessness.
Wow. I love that.
And I was like, wow, where did that come from? And that's going to come in handy. And anyway, that was wonderful. Gina-Dianne,
that's great. Super. How about you, Santina?
Well, what's interesting is that, like, I've always believed in the whole, like, and I seem to have been like one of the one-outs, and some people get upset when you say that, you know. I believe that, you know, we are whole, and we experience where we are right now in this physical manifestation that we call body. And what distinguishes, let's say, the male and female is basically only one part of the body, you know. Mm-hmm. You have in terms of the physical body, but like you addressed very nicely, you know, we have the traits, and we've always known that each sex has, you know, the other traits, and sometimes we have more of one trait or the other. And I would say that they don't necessarily match the exterior either, you know. So because I've been thinking that while you were speaking, when we went on this journey, she came and she kind of hugged me. That's the way I felt. She just kind of embraced me, and the gift that I got actually was morphing. Oh, so that's going to be kind of interesting.
Oh, yes.
I don't know exactly, but it's going to manifest in its own way. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I'll be delighted to hear how that unfolds.
Yes. That's right. It's going to be great. Thank you.
Well, I hope that anybody that's listening on the replay will maybe make a comment to Adela in the Wild Creatrix Cafe.
Absolutely. The other thing that I got that was surprising, just because Santina reminded me of it when she said she, were hugging. We were like on a beach and our feet were in the water. So we were of the earth and we were in the water at the same time. And I got this sense of her, because I know that the way that she's been portrayed historically in certain stories, I got this feel of just this compassionate strength, this like depth of compassion that was so strong that could contain everything, that could contain all. And I was surprised by that, because I've always felt her power, and it always felt to me, a very external, palpable kind of physical power. I don't know why I felt that way about her. She always came across as someone really strong to me, but I never got that idea or that sensation of inwardly strong, like really having this wellspring, this depth of compassion it was like never ending. I was, because I felt myself like kind of falling through there, with her when I was lying down. I felt myself falling into that depth of compassion and being transported by the immensity of it, the depth of it.
Oh, yeah, that's great. You really connected with her.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. Thank you, Gina-Dianne. I love this. All right, so.
Santina, did you have something else?
No.
Okay,
awesome. So just our last parting thought before we you share with folks somewhere where they can find out more about you and find out what you're up to these days. But I wondered if you had, just for those of us that are creators and creatrixes, any insights or tips that you've discovered along the way of, creating, because you keep creating, Gina-Dianne. Any insight you'd like to share with us about this process of creating and bringing your babies into the world, bringing these creations into the world?
I think the big thing is to allow yourself to play with whatever comes up, and don't have any judgment about it at all. Do it for the enjoyment of it and not for the outcome. Enjoy the process, and be willing to be surprised by where it takes you, and allow your wild creatrix to come out. Be open to expressing things that you normally wouldn't, and allow that. I think that sometimes shapes the fact that we can be creatrixes in our in one way will shape us so that we can be a little bit wild and uninhibited and expressive in our whole lives.
All right, so throw the good girl and the good boy out, the rule follower,
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah, it's that's something that we're taught and we're trained in that way, and that's one of those things that, oh my goodness, yes, that let's let that go. Thank you.
Life is so much better when you do.
So where can folks find out more about you and what you're up to next?
Well, I think probably the easiest is to go to Facebook, to my author's page, Gina-Dianne Harding, author. And I'm in the process of revamping my websites. So I will share that with people on my author's site when it's up and running. But for now, the other thing that I'd like to offer people is an opportunity, although we haven't talked much about transcendence. I think that's been an underlying idea when you're getting into higher consciousness. So I'd like to offer an opportunity for people to have a guide for the first steps on your transformational journey. And they can get that by emailing me at Gina-Dianne and it's a 14-page PDF that will take you through opening you up to living a transcendent higher conscious life and giving you some ideas for the next steps in your journey as you unleash. And it's for people that are wildly unleashed already and want to jump into the next, or for people that are just beginning their exploration.
That is a really generous gift, my love. Thank you for that surprise. And I'm just going to add one thing, that if you've never done this kind of thing before, sometimes you will be surprised at what can happen just by stepping into the playground. The speed at which people are open to these kinds of things has increased.
Yes.
And so magical things can happen just from reading a sentence, a paragraph from someone whose, writing is imbued with the energy of, the beyond, which we've got someone right here.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Adela.
Oh,
that was delightful. Thank you, Santina. So glad that you joined us this morning.
Thank you, Santina, for joining the circle. It's been awesome. Thank you.
And here's Eli to say goodbye to.
Oh, perfect timing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.